I changed the title a bit. The title was, Will Artificial Intelligence Replace Clinical Trials? The answer is no. These are complementary, not competing intelligence. And Roxana, your future looks quite bright, by the way. I've received grant support from different companies engaged in this area, particularly Apple for the Heartline trial, which I'll talk a little bit about. Artificial intelligence. Basically, I think it is not going to do a lot for us, I hate to say it, above and beyond traditional statistics and decision making. I do think it is going to have a big role in imaging. In terms of decision making, I've published a few articles on this. We all want to take data from trials. Those are averages of patients, but we treat individual patients. How do you make an individual patient decision? And we like to know, is the patient going to have a reduced risk of bleeding and a reduced risk of ischemic events? That's in that upper right-hand quadrant. And we can identify those patients using artificial intelligence. So yes, it may have a role in identifying the appropriate patients for a trial or therapy. The failure to date is to say, at baseline, I can predict what's going to happen years from now. What we do as clinicians, someone comes back and we iteratively make decisions. And I think the real role of these technologies is going to be in assisting us in those iterative decisions. Imaging. This is a company I do work with, Us2AI. Carolyn Lamb, a world-class heart failure doc, is one of the founders. And what they do is they acquire images, and it is agnostic to the technology or the company, acquire ultrasound images, and within 30 seconds after the images are acquired, tells you every quantitative measurement about the heart. Amazing technology, and I do think this is going to advance care. If you look at what Mayo is doing, you know, the Mayo has techniques of looking at the EKG, and using AI, they can tell you if it's a man or a woman. Thank you, I don't really need that. They can tell you if the person had AFib recently or not. That's great. But they can tell you if the person had LV dysfunction. And the idea is that that could then be the trigger for technology like this, where in primary care, someone could take this probe hooked up to their iPhone and make some definitive diagnoses. So we're seeing a lot of technologies like LiveCore, Us2AI, many throughout medicine that are going to supplement our decision making. In terms of the digital landscape, I do think we're going to see virtual trials replace traditional randomized trials. I'm going to talk about one I'm running, which is the Heartline trial with Apple. It's a randomized trial of up to 180,000 patients to see if the Apple Watch with some algorithms can detect new AFib and improve outcomes. This trial will cost 1% of a traditional randomized trial. Why? It's not hospital-based, it's virtual. You can be anywhere and get enrolled in the trial. We're not using ECRFs, we're using claims databases to see if someone had an event. Again, it's not paper, no IRB, not institution specific, it's global with a centralized IRB and all electronic. You know, we used to enroll 10 to 20,000 patients trials. I think that's a mega trial. In these trials, we'll be enrolling tens of thousands of patients, and they'll be much more real world than the highly narrowly focused trials of the past. We'll have very good odds of showing a treatment effect given the size of the studies. In the past, we were lucky to enroll hundreds of people a month. Now we'll be enrolling tens of thousands per month. The key is to get patients. We're reaching out into social media, traditional media to find patients for these studies. And as I said before, instead of spending $1 billion to do a randomized trial, we'll be doing those trials for 1% of the budget. If you're only spending 1% per trial, you can do a lot more trials and have a lot more shots on goal. Again, instead of the traditional CEC, we'll be deciding if someone had an event based upon claims databases. Does this work? We published this recently. Here on the left-hand side, you see event curves using traditional CEC, people, humans adjudicating events. And over on the right-hand side, you see the same Kaplan-Meier curve if you use a claims database. And what you can see is you get the same answer. So we could eliminate the need for CECs. If you use claims databases, you have no patients go missing. In the US, if you're an older person over 65, you're going to be in the claims database. And we're going to have terabytes of data per patient to actually personalize the decisions. So I think wearables, as we heard from Dr. Bott, will collect tremendous amounts of data that we can use for that kind of individualized decision making. We're also coming up on ways to share data. Many of us published this perspective in the New England Journal about how we could be doing a better job of sharing. There are tools out there that are going to go into the electronic health record, pull the information out that we can all share. But we have to be careful. We have to be careful with observational data. We all learned during the pandemic that there were so many treatments out there that we heard were successful in treating COVID, and they weren't when we did a randomized trial. And you have to be careful of all these correlations you see. Correlation obviously does not imply causation. We've been led down this path many times with observational studies. When you do the randomized trial, you really don't see the benefit. And finally, when it comes to AI, it is a bit of a black box. It comes up with a diagnosis or a decision, but you don't know why. One of my favorite examples is looking at the prognosis of melanoma patients, and they thought this tool was great. It could tell you the prognosis of the patient. It turns out all it was really doing was identifying that there was a ruler in the background. So if there was a ruler, the doctor was suspicious that it was big and going to be associated with a bad outcome. We have to make sure we're not just identifying rulers, that we're really identifying things that will make a difference. So technology should work for healthcare. We should not be working for technology. And having health information does not mean we have healthcare. We have a lot of work to do there. But I don't think digital health will be competing with human intelligence. I think it will complement all of us. And I hope that it will allow us to more efficiently put the patient back at the center of healthcare. Thank you.